another WordPress tutorial. In this video, we're going to take a look on how to create our Ajax login in our plugin. So if we scroll down in our administration area, we access the plugin manager here and we activate the Ajax login sign up. Of course, for the way we set it up previously, we're going to have this login manager page that it's kind of useless and also has the wrong title, whatever. So we're gonna deactivate this and we're gonna automatically generate implementation, like a sort of like absolute widget that it's floating here with a button written login. And when we click on the button, a form, an Ajax form will appear here for us to log in or register or allow the user to access the administration area. So let's do it. Let's access our code editor. In our Inc folder, we need to access the auth controller. That's the name we gave to the admin Ajax or the Ajax login controller. And let's clean up a little bit this code. We don't need the callbacks. We don't need to call the settings API. We're not creating any custom section there. Let's delete all of these. Let's just leave these. Check in if the login manager is activated or is not activated, just return the script. And we can also delete this method that we're not gonna use. Perfect, now it's cleaner. Now we can start actually coding all the methods in our auth controller. So first we need to create a new file. Let's access our templates folder and let's create a new file called auth.php. And in this file, we're gonna basically generate a simple form with all the input fields necessary to have a proper login method. So let's create a form and the action is gonna just go to hashtag or number symbol because we don't wanna redirect this to anything. Let's specify a unique ID and the ID has to be unique because we have to reference it in all our scripts. Let's call it alecad-auth-form, the method post. So let's create the data URL data attribute, and basically we are recreating something really similar to what we did for the testimonial form. So let's echo the admin URL because we need to grab that, and the admin URLs of the admin-ajax.php. Perfect. And let's do something really simple. So for now, let's create just a div container with the class called auth-btn, stands for button, and inside here we're gonna create a button input field, type button, and the value is gonna be equal to login, and the ID of this button I want to be alecad-show-auth form. Okay, let's just leave it like that for now. We are not creating the form right now because we're not going to use it, but we need this template in order to understand how to properly include it in our WordPress installation or the installation of our user. Because right now we have this template generated, but if we access the front end and we refresh, how can we actually put that little template, that little form script or button that we generated up here inside the header or not in a page? I don't want to generate a shortcode. I don't want to put it as a widget. I want to put it always in every page here in the header, floating on the top right. Well, of course, we can use a hook, a method of WordPress. Let's go back in our editor, and in the auth controller, we can generate our first action. So let's create add action, and the action that we need to tap is the WP_head, and this action happens when WordPress is generated a header. So by doing this, we can sort of like intercept the generation of the header and inject whatever things we want to do. As usual, because we are in object-oriented, let's generate an array with the instance of this class, and then let's call a method however we want. I'm gonna call it add auth template, and now we need to create this method. So public function add auth template. Perfect, no parameters need to be passed. And here first I'm gonna store into a file variable the location of my template. So I'm gonna tap the plugin path that it's coming from the base controller, and then I'm gonna concatenate it as usual with my templates directory, and then I'm gonna tap the auth.php file, the file that we just created. And I'm gonna do a something really identical to the testimonial slider, the carousel that we created in previous lesson. I'm gonna check if the file exists. I'm gonna pass this file. Okay, if this file exists, we're all good. We can use a built-in method of WordPress once again to load the template, and the template needs one parameter, but two parameters are better, because the first parameter of the load template method is just the actual template. It's gonna load it. But if we specify it as a second parameter, the boolean true, we're telling to this load template to just load once. So this load template is basically gonna do a require once, and it's not gonna require or include that template multiple times if it's already there. Perfect. So if we save it now and we access back our front end, we refresh, if we open the inspector, we go inside the elements and we access the header, see what we have here. We have the form, Alicat auth form. So the form is actually getting included. Let's style a little bit this thing just to make it visible, because right now it's, of course, it's underneath everything and it's not visible. We cannot see what's happening. So let's go back in our code editor. And let's create a couple of assets files. So in our JavaScript folder in the source, let's create an auth.js file. And in the SCSS, let's create a new auth.scss file. And of course, because we generated these two new files, we need to update our goal file.js to actually include those in our bundling and compiling of all the assets. So here we can duplicate this slide, style auth, and these can reference the auth.scss and also the JS slider, JS auth, and these reference the auth.js, and the JS auth can be part right now of this array. And then we can do the same with the style auth here. Perfect. Okay. Now that we updated our goal file.js with our two bundling things, we can access our terminal, the location of our plugin, and run gulp watch. Everything should go smoothly, and now we should also have an auth.js file and an auth.css file. So it's time to enqueue it inside our page. And if you remember what I did in the testimonial template, I was enqueuing whenever the user was calling the testimonial form with the shortcode. I was enqueuing inline the style and the JavaScript, because I didn't want those two files always loaded, even if the user wasn't using the actual contact form or the slider. We don't need to do that, because these auth controller or this auth.php form will be present in every single page of the template installation of the user. So we can simply enqueue it with the regular WPQ script that we should all know how it works. So let's go back in our auth controller. Let's create a new add action. And let's say here, the action is WP enqueue_scripts. That is the default of WordPress. And as usual, let's do an array, and let's pass this instance of this class, and let's tap a method that we can simply go enqueue. That's perfect. Semicolon at the end. Awesome. So WP enqueue script. Let's create a new method right here. So public function enqueue. No parameters need to be passed to this method, and here we can simply do a WP enqueue style, and we can call it auth style, something like that. And then we need to reference this plugin location, plugin_URL, and then concatenate with the location of our CSS. So we're gonna go inside the assets, because that's the one that we compiled, .css. Perfect. And then we can duplicate this and change it with WP enqueue script. And also here, let's change it with script. And also here, plugin URL auth.js. Oh, here I forgot to put the bigger than sign, a little arrow, pointing arrow to the plugin URL variable of the base controller. So now we have these two methods that hooked to the WP enqueue script should enqueue in our page everywhere the auth.css and auth.js. So if we save it, we go back in our front end and we refresh. We open once again the inspector, we check the network, we go to JS, refresh here. open the network. Yes, auth.js is getting enqueued properly, even if nothing is there. If we access the CSS, auth.css, it's there. Fantastic. We are enqueuing properly our assets. That's what we wanted. Now we can generate a little bit of CSS to properly style that little thing, that little form with the button on the top left position. So we specify the ID of that form, so cannot mismatched with anything else. And the auth form, I want to put it on a position absolute. Then I want to put on top 0 and right 0. Then I want to give it a z-index of 10 just to put it above everything else, all the other elements that could be on the page. And then I want to give it an overflow hidden because I don't want elements that are bigger than this container or are outside. And you're going to understand later because we're going to animate something. Then we have inside our auth.php this auth button, and we want to style this a little bit. So let's say that inside the alicat auth form, we have this class called auth btn, and this one has a margin of 20 pixels, so it's going to be detached a little bit. And also this has a position absolute, and top and right also 0, and that's it. Let's leave it like that. So let's go back in our front end, let's refresh. It's not visible. Let's remove just for now the overflow hidden that we're not using for now, but we're going to use it later. So if we refresh, okay, now we have our login button that doesn't do anything, doesn't go anywhere. So now you can see this is a little bit silly because we have a login button while I'm already logged in. The admin dashboard is here, the admin bar is here, and I'm logged in into the dashboard of my installation. So I don't need the login button if I'm already logged in. So all these script, all these auth, JavaScript, Ajax thing shouldn't happen if the user is already logged in. So we can do something really simple inside the auth controller in order to prevent to execute any of these if the user is already logged in. It's going to be really simple. So here inside the add auth template, we can do something like a check, a really simple check immediately here. So we can generate a condition and say if is the user underscore logged underscore in, and this is a built-in method of WordPress that will return true or false is a boolean if the user is logged in. So if the user is logged in, so it's true, let's return this script. So let's avoid to execute anything else. And let's copy these the same inside our enqueue because we want to prevent to enqueue or do extra HTTP request if we don't need it. Let's save it. Let's go back in our front end. Let's refresh. And now the login button is not there, the script are not loaded, but if I do something like this, if I log out from my installation, I'm back to the home page, ta-da, the button is here and it's getting loaded. You could think of why you didn't put this user logged in inside the register, because this method is available only after the header of WordPress, the WP head, is generated. So if I put this method here, this is gonna be an undefined method. So perfect, now we have our button. Let's style the actual form and let's use JavaScript to create a little bit of transition. So when the user clicks the button, the form appears and the button disappears. So let's access the auth.php and let's actually generate the form. So because I didn't want to spend too much time in writing HTML, I just copy pasted my form code. No worries, this code is available in the GitHub repository. You can find the link in the description below. Just copy the auth.php code and paste it here, or if you want to pause this video and copy the structure, it's just a simple div with the auth container with a unique ID. I have a closing icon, I have a title, username, password field, the submit button, a paragraph class called status, and then a paragraph called actions that redirects to the WP lost password URL or the WP registration URL, the default one. So, and then I'm generating inside the form the nonce field, the same type of method we use in our testimonial contact form. So now we have this form. If we access our page and we refresh, there you go. We have this mess of a form because everything is terrible. We didn't style anything. So let's do a little bit of CSS CSS styling. If we access our auth.scss, we can generate a couple of classes. So first, let's create an auth-container. That is the class that I specify for that wrapper. And I'm going to give it a fixed width of 220 pixels. And then I'm going to give it a margin of 20 pixels. I don't want this to be attached to the border. Then the position, I want this to be relative because I'm going to do something with it. We need to have a relative position. We give it a background color of white, padding of 10 pixels, and a border radius 4 pixels. Nice. If we access back our front end, refresh, it already looks slightly nicer than before. It's still pretty horrible, but let's continue our CSS work. Now, inside this method, the h2, I wanna give it a margin top of 0, then a margin bottom of 10 pixels, then a padding top 0. And a font size, I want to make it slightly smaller of 16 pixels. Perfect. Then I have my close method, or the close class of the little icon that I want to be a position absolute, because that's why I created a container with a position relative, so I can absolute position the elements inside without jumping around or getting outside of the container. And I want this to have like a position of top 3 pixels and to the right of 10 pixels. And then a font size, also in this case, of 16 pixels. Then style a little bit the labels. Label, I want to have a font size of 10 pixels, and then a text transform uppercase. Style a little bit, and then we want to style both the input type text and the input type password. So input type text, and also let's duplicate this, but input type password, and we want to give it a margin bottom of 10 pixels, so a little bit of spacing, and then some padding of 4 pixels, and then a font size of 12 pixels, so it's not going to be too big. And then we have the last container that we defined, and we called actions, and the actions is going to have text alignment center, then a margin bottom of 0 because we need to reset the default margin bottom of a paragraph. And then all the links, all the A tags that are inside this action will have a font size of 10 pixels, then a text transform uppercase, then I want to display them inline block, and then I want to give it a margin of 0 top and bottom and 4 pixel right and left. Perfect. Let's save it. Let's go back in our front end. There you go. Now we have our form that it's properly styled, or I mean, it's not super styled, but it's better than before. And it's in a position relative, so we can put the class, the close icon in a position absolute on the top right. The button is in a position absolute, it's underneath, we cannot see it. So now what we want to do, a little bit of magic with JavaScript and CSS. So I want that by default, this form is not visible. It's hidden. Maybe we can slide it to the right outside the page. Then if a user clicks on the login button that it's underneath, the login button disappears and the form appears. And if I click on the close icon, the form disappears and the login button appears back. So let's do it. First, let's update a little bit the CSS. So let's give a variation of the class. So if the auth button has a class called hide, we want this to display none. The button is going to be underneath there. It's in a position absolute. We don't need to really animate the invisibility option of this. So just simply a display none. By default, let's give the auth container, that is the one that I want to animate, a transition of the transform property for a speed of 200 milliseconds with an ease type of animation. And then let's give a transform property of translate X, so we're going to translate only on the horizontal axis of 300 pixels. So by doing this, if we refresh here, the login form is not there, but you can see that because I put it, like I pushed it 300 pixels to the right, we have this issue here that the page gets pushed, like this is a total mistake because we're hitting the overflow of the page. In order to prevent this, we need to set an overflow hidden of the auth form. That's why I had it before, overflow hidden. By doing this, if we refresh now, we don't have that overflow anymore. The form, it's here, it's hidden to the right, and we cannot see it. Fantastic. And then we need to create a variation of this class. So we say that if this class has a show class attached to it, we can transform the translate x to 0. So we're gonna reset it. Perfect. So now we need to make the button and the closing icon interactive in our JavaScript section. So once again, let's wait for the document to be loaded. So we can specify if the document has the DOM content loaded, then we can trigger our function with the event here, even if I don't think we will use it, but let's close all of this stuff. Let's open it. Okay, perfect. Let's create a couple of constant variables. So first, let's tap the show auth button. Then it's gonna be equal to a document get element by ID because we specified all those ID, and the ID is alecad-show-auth-form. Let's put a comma here. And let's indent, and the auth container, it's equal once again to the document get element by ID and alecad auth dash container. And then let's duplicate once again this, let's put a comma, and instead of the auth container, let's give it like a close name and document alecad auth close. This is the ID, and then semicolon. Perfect. Now we can create just a couple of event listener and then we're done. So let's say that the show auth button, we want to attach an event listener. So whenever someone clicks on that button, we can use the arrow functions to execute an inline nameless function. We can say that the auth container should have add to itself a class list called show. Perfect. And then the show auth button, that is the one that we just click, we should access the parent element, that is the container. If we access the auth PHP, we have the show button, that is this one. The auth button is the one that has a position absolute, and we specify in the CSS that the auth button has a hidden display none property when we add the hide class. We can say at the parent element class list add hide. Perfect. So this should show the form. Now we can do something identical but in reverse for the close button. So we can say that in a close, let's add an event listener also here, and also in this case this is a click event, and in the click event also here let's do our nameless arrow function. The auth container, we can simply just copy these things, paste them here, and instead of add, let's remove these classes. So the auth container will remove the class show, and the show auth button parent element, the container, will remove the class hide. Let's check if our terminal compile everything. Yes, I have everything, all my JavaScript compile. Let's access our front end. Let's refresh. Perfect. So now if I click login, boom, the login button disappeared, the login form appeared, and if I click close, back to what we was before. Ta-da, ta-da, this is fantastic. So this was the first step, the first part to generate an Ajax login form for WordPress. I showed you how to include an extra template, some like custom code in your header, but of course you can generate this login form as a shortcode, you can generate it as a widget, you can put it in a page, in a post, whatever you want. With all the examples that I show you in this tutorial series, you should know how to generate this section in whatever location you want in the WordPress template of the user. In the next tutorial, we're going to actually see how to trigger this login form connected to the backend of WordPress and automatically log in the user. And of course here, because I didn't want to deal with the actual forgot password and register in Ajax, I called some built-in method of WordPress to redirect to the forgot password or also redirect to the register page. But of course, after the next tutorial, you will be able to handle this thing in Ajax as well. Well, it's pretty much it for this video. Thank you guys for watching, and I talk to you in the next one.